Hello everyone, welcome to another Star Wars figure tutorial, and today I'll be showing you how to turn the brand new Phase 1 Attack of the Clones Clone Trooper into a fixed proportions Phase 1 clone officer from Attack of the Clones. This works for any color officer, however I strongly suggest doing the Commander and Captain variants because of the color of the plastic. The Sergeant and Lieutenants have sort of like a more like sort of off-white, almost like green color plastic for the armor that doesn't really work well with these guys, whereas the color of the white armor from the helmet and the shoulders used matches perfectly with the new Clone Trooper. Additionally, you can choose to paint on these, mask off the helmet, but it just takes more time, it's more work. The way I do it lets you save a little bit of work. All the decals, you're going to need to do some water slide decals for the dots. Those are available for free in the video description. I made them myself, and you can just print them out and put them on your figures, so hopefully that's helpful. Let's go into the materials for this guy. Alright, so as far as figures go, I'm going to be using two figures for this tutorial. I'm going to be using a brand new Attack of the Clones Phase 1 Clone Trooper from Hasbro, and I'm also using the old Phase 1 Clone Captain. This guy was a part of the Blue Box line. You could use this guy, you could use a Clone Commander. You could also even use some of the knockoff ones. I know they sell knockoff Clone Captains, only $15 on eBay. Those would also work. You could also just use a regular Phase 1 clone, but you'd have to repaint him. So this is the easiest because it saves you some time. As far as paints go for this guy, I really only use 5 paints. That's Vallejo Air Neutral Gray, Vallejo Air Black, just regular model color Vallejo Flat Red. I use gloss varnish, and I use airbrush thinner. To seal the paint apps on this guy, I use the standard Krylon UV resistant clear matte acrylic coating. Definitely going to need a hobby knife, like an X-Acto knife. Can optionally use a Dremel to speed things up as well. Going to need some masking tape. I recommend this Tamiya masking tape. This stuff's awesome. You're definitely going to need to use a drill with a couple of different bits. For simplicity, I recommend using an airbrush. Also going to need a hot glue gun and some Vaseline. And it can never hurt to have a small, thin brush to use to paint into small details. Finally, you're just going to need some wire. This is called extra... Finally, you're going to need some wire. I believe this is extra strong necklace memory wire from Hobby Lobby. Crimper or wire cutter to cut the memory wire. Blow dryer to heat up the plastic. And some sort of pair of pliers. These ones are pretty long, but any sort of pliers will be very useful. As with previous mods, we're going to do the same thing as before. We're going to heat them up, pop off the shoulder pads, or pop off the helmet, and then we're going to fix that torso. With the shoulder pads and the helmet removed, now I'm going to fix the knee pads. I'm just going to free them of the legs. Again, I'm going to heat them with the blow jar, then it's going to X-Acto knife them. Alright, now we're just going to get these knee pads off. Just going to peel them back a little bit so I can look inside. And then once I can see that little white peg inside there, now I'm just going to cut it. Very slow, very deliberate. Making sure not to mess up the knee pad. There's one. Now I'm going to peel back the left one. Looking again for that little peg in there. There it is. Slow and deliberate. And both knee pads are free now. I'm just going to heat them up again because bending them backwards sometimes kind of makes them a little warped like that, and reheating them will fix that. So let's do that. Now we're going to paint the area we just cut black with a little bit of Vallejo Air Black. Just put a little black right there, and let's paint it. Just gotta twist this so you can see a little better. Alright, so now knee pads are painted, now we'll let them dry. While those knee pads are drying, we'll be painting the bands that are unpainted using a little bit of Vallejo Air Neutral Gray. Don't need a whole lot, a little will do the trick. Alright, both knee bands are now painted, so now we can move on to fixing the torso height. Just going to blow dry this guy, make him nice and warm. Then I'm going to cut that black peg that sits right in the middle using an X-Acto knife. Alright, so got him now. He's all nice and heated up. Just going to bend him over using my X-Acto knife. Going to try and cut that peg on the inside and avoid accidentally cutting the back armor. Just going to go nice and slow, working my way through the torso. There we go. Nice clean cut. Not too much damage to the back armor. We can just, there we go. Torso peg has been cut. Now we're just going to cut this down again as usual, cutting off about 1 centimeter. Going all the way around rather than trying to cut it flat. There we go. Pop his leg back in, he's going to need that. Cool. Now we can, yep, time to drill out the pegs and we can put in the wire. Again, using a 1/16 drill bit, just gonna push that into the middle and then drill down. Make sure it's nice and clean. There we go. Hole is drilled through that center torso. Perfect. Now we're gonna drill a hole in the top torso. There we go, both holes are now drilled and we can go ahead and get our necklace memory wire. I straightened out some of the memory wire, now I'm just going to cut off about 1 inch. A little less, probably maybe like 80% of an inch. There we go, now I can put this in. Just going to super glue into the joint. Then drop that rod in there. Now we're going to glue on top of the joint on the other one. There we go, and now drop him in there. And just gonna let this dry now. Alright, so he's fully dry now, the torso's in place. Now we're gonna be doing the masking for the biceps. I'm gonna be using this Tamiya masking tape. This stuff's awesome. The first thing you do when you wanna mask this guy is I usually do the elbow pads. You wanna have, let me get another show you. You wanna have half the elbow painted and half the elbow unpainted. So you're just going to put tape right there in the middle to mask that. And then you're also going to want to cover up these elbow bands so they don't get paint on them. So they look just like that. So I'll show you how to do that. Here are the elbow pads masked off. As you can see, it's a nice hard edge right there. And then I just took it all the way around to here. And now I'm going to mask off the middle of these elbow pads so that there's the painted side on the outside. Alright, so here's what the elbow pads look like masked off. As you can see, I left the outside white. And then I have the bands covered so they won't get paint on them. And then the outside of them is white. I also recommend folding the tape underneath the half right there. That way it won't look weird when you spray it. See, this one came up. Just push that, press that underneath there, keep it flat. Now we can move on to the biceps. For the biceps, what I recommend doing is there's a little sort of like a little ridge right here, like a straight line. I'm just gonna get my camera right there. You want the end of the tape to be parallel to that. Let me get this guy right here. As you can see on Fordo here, you want the end right here to be parallel with this line right there, and that should make it look pretty good. I would say that you want this edge to be about 0.35 centimeters to the right of this hard line right there, and that'll give you a perfect mask. So I'll show you what that looks like real quick. Here's what the front of the biceps look like. As you can see, we have that 0.35 distance from the seam line to the front edge of this. This piece of tape is running parallel to this raised edge right there. Same on the other side. And now we're going to do the back. For the back, all I do is I generally just have the tape start right here at this sort of bicep like curve right here. I just have it go straight up, again parallel to the seam and this tape we just placed. Let me show you how it looks right here. There it is. See, I start it right there and it just goes straight up parallel. And that generally looks pretty good, so we'll do that. There it is on the other side if you want to see it. Yeah, I just have it start where this curve terminates, and then it just goes straight up. Here's how the rear bicep tape looks. Again, it started where that curve terminated and just went straight up, and it's parallel to both of these two lines made by the tape and by this raised seam thing on the armor. So now we're going to move on to the forearms. Showing you here on Fordo, basically all you want to do for the masking off this forearm piece, and it's the same for both parts of the arm, is to line up the tape with the outer edge of this joint right here. See that right there? That little sort of intersection formed by the outer edge of the joint and this armor piece, and then have it run parallel to this right outer edge of the armor and go straight down to the bottom. There's nothing to line up with on it here, but you just want it to go straight in line with this outer edge of the armor. So I'll show you how that looks. Okay, here's how that looks. Again, I just lined it up with that outer edge of the joint there and ran it straight down parallel to the outer edge of the armor, and it's looking pretty good. And you can see here, you know you did it right if it lines up with the top tape as well. It should look and form like a single cohesive line. So I'm going to flip it and just do the back of the stripe. For the back stripe, I start it from the bottom rather than the top. I look for where there's this little triangle formed at the base of the clone's wrist. See if I can zoom on there. A little triangle right here. I just go right there at the edge of the inner triangle right there. You can see here's the left vertex and here's the right vertex. We're going to go at that right vertex, or the inner vertex if you will, and just run parallel to this. You can see there's like a raised ridge right here. Just run parallel to the raised ridge. You're looking at about maybe like 0.2 centimeters to the right of this, or to the inside of this raised ridge is where you put that outer edge of your tape. Alright, so here's what the rear of the forearm looks like once it's masked. As you can see, we have it just a little bit slightly off to the inside of this raised ridge right here in the back, and it's aligned with that triangle going parallel to the ridge. And yeah, we're pretty much done masking. Well, with the actual hard part of masking, now all I have to do is just cover up all of the torso and all the little parts of the arms that aren't going to be shown. This you will paint. You will paint this glove right here, or not the glove, but the wrist guard, so you want to leave that uncovered. However, you should try and cover up as much of the black as you can, just so you don't have to repaint that. So I'm just going to use large blue painter's tape for the majority of the body because it's easier to peel and cheaper. So we'll do that. I wouldn't use this to edge the lines of anything because this stuff is not as good as this model painter's tape. This doesn't really adhere to plastic that well, and it bleeds a lot. So definitely use the yellow stuff if you're going to mask this guy off. Alright, so now we're going to move over to our donor figure, the red clone captain, and we're going to mix this color red. To do that, we're going to be using Vallejo Model Color Flat Red, Vallejo Air Black, and airbrush thinner because I'm using my airbrush. You might be able to hand paint this, but from my experience it's always just best to airbrush if you have one, so I'm going to be doing that. Going to start off by putting a healthy amount of airbrush thinner into the mix at the bottom. There we go. Now we'll put in the red. Now we'll mix that up. You want to make sure this has like a milky consistency. And now what we're going to be doing now that we have the red mixed with the paint thinner is that we want to sort of try and get our clone captain, and we're going to try and color match it so we can get the same red. As of right now, if you were to paint it on, we can see right here on the side, but it would be way too bright to match the armor color. And the way you can check is you just get your figure like this, and I like to just paint on just a little bit on the shoulder pad and compare. And you can see right there it's too light, so we're going to go ahead and fix that, darkening it a little bit with some black. You want to be very careful with the black because even a little bit will darken it significantly. I'm literally just going to put in like a drop and then mix that up. Just going to test it out on these instructions this came with. Yeah, that looks pretty solid, so we're going to use it. Alright, we have our mummified clones. Now we're going to go ahead and spray them. Alright, so once he's dry, you're not going to want to take off the tape just yet. I'm going to use Krylon UV resistant acrylic clear coat. This is a matte clear coat. It works quite well, makes it nice and matte. The only reason why I'm doing this is because I want to match the original figure, and on the original figure the armor is painted sort of like a, while the armor itself is glossy, the paint stripes themselves are matte. So I'm going to be able to make this matte, and the armor underneath is still going to be glossy. So I'm just going to hit it real quick with this. just hit them with the clear coat and now I'm just going to let them dry. Alright, so now that the clear coat's done drying, we can finally remove it. Alright, so now that that's all done, we're going to move over to the donor figure where I take off his shoulder pad, take off his helmet. With the shoulder pads, you can either heat them up, like sort of like with a blow dryer, or you could just kind of pry them off. If you pry them off from the bottom, they usually come off pretty easily. I'm just going to hit this guy with a little blow dryer to get it loose. If it doesn't come off, like this one's being a little bit difficult, you can take an X-Acto knife and very, very, very carefully go underneath the armor and cut it free. However, I recommend trying to pull it off as much as you can because cutting this kind of sucks. We'll take off the arm though before I do this. Makes it just a little bit easier to see what you're doing. Then we'll just cut. And there we go, pried it off. I'm going to heat this up again. I'm also going to paint and I'm going to fix this. The Hasbro one came just a little bit scuffed up and damaged, so I'm just going to paint this a little bit and clean it up. And there we go. This is all nice and cleaned up now. Alright, so now that this guy's done, I've taken all the tape off. I'm just going to go back, I'm going to paint black over all the parts where the red painted onto the undersuit. Should be pretty quick, just use Vallejo Air Black for that, and a nice small brush. I'm going to do basically the same thing I did for the other Clone Trooper fix tutorial. I'm going to fix up the mouth a little bit. I think the printing's a little bit too big for the mouth, so I'm just going to use some nail polish remover. I'm going to kind of clean up that frown. Just taking a little bit at a time. I'm just going to go over it like that, being careful not to disturb the red printing. There we go. Just going to go over there, thin out those lines a little bit. Oops. Now to the other side. There we go. I'm going to fill in this frown a little bit. Just going to take a little bit of black, then now I'm just going to paint inside the frown. Just same on the other side. Now the key is to wipe it away. You can just do it with your thumb or something. Wipe, wipe, wipe. Now I'm just going to hit it once again with a little bit of nail polish remover on the top, just to make it nice and clean. There we go. I'm also going to paint the red underneath the chin a little bit because there's a little bit of black overpaint on it, you can see. There we go. Looking good. I'm going to take a little bit of Vallejo Air Neutral Gray and just paint in these teeth that are missing on the original figure. Alright, now I'm just going to paint in the gray teeth real quick. Just going to get a teeny bit of neutral gray on my paintbrush. Then we're just going to hit it. One, two. Alright, so I'm done cleaning up the helmet. I painted in the gray teeth. I also cleaned up the frown. I went back and I painted the helmet band black. It was a little sloppy, so I just cleaned it up a little bit. Now I'm just going to do the final step, which is going to be take some Vallejo gloss varnish and just paint the visor. It'll make it nice and shiny, so I'm going to go ahead and knock that out. Alright, now that the gloss has been applied, we just let it sit. Alright, next step is going to be to apply the dots to his chest. For this, we're going to be using this decal sheet. I actually made these decals myself. As you can see, it took some tries to get it sized correctly. However, on the sheet I have decals for a clone commander, captain, lieutenant. I have the color of lieutenant in the black series, which is more of a darker blue, and clone sergeant. I recommend using 2 decals, put them on top of each other to get more like a more vibrant, like fuller color. This is just printed on decal paper, water slide decal paper from Hobby Lobby. You just put this in your printer and literally just print it, and then it's good to go. All you have to do is you have to seal it first. I sealed this with a matte sealer, so I just use the same Krylon crystal clear matte acrylic finish to seal it first, and then you can apply it. And all you're going to do to apply this is just get a bowl of lukewarm water, let it soak in there for a little bit, and then literally just put it on with like a Q-tip, and that's all it takes. Alright, so you just want to push it down off the transfer paper, and then wipe it clean. Oops. You can manipulate it until you have it somewhere where you like. And then that looks pretty good. Once you have it where you want it, then you can just dab it and dab all the water away, and then it'll dry in place. Alright, so now we're going to put our second decal on top of it just to make it a little more vibrant. I'm going to dump it in here for a couple seconds until it dries, then we're just going to layer it right on top of the other one. Looks like it's separated, so I'm going to put it roughly on there. I'm going to get my Q-tip and we can manipulate it into place. Alright, so I used an X-Acto knife to position the dots into place, and now they're good to go. So once that's finished, you can then take a Q-tip and just dab the dots. Make sure they're nice and dry, absorb all the water. And now we're ready for the next part. Alright, so now we're just going to take our drill. I'm using a 5/16 drill bit and just drill out the helmet a little more. Make the ball joint a little deeper so it can sit properly on the helmet. Make sure to check the positioning of the helmet every couple seconds, or I would say every couple times you drill, to make sure it's deep enough, because the worst thing you could do is drill too deep. This one's almost there. I'm just going to do a couple more seconds. Looks like it fits pretty well, so now we can go and make the joint. As usual, we're just going to make a hot glue and Vaseline joint. While the hot glue gun's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and get these shoulder pads fitted to put on the arms. All we're going to do is we're just going to Dremel away this sort of bottom part right here, and then we're going to be able to attach them. If you don't have a Dremel, you can use an X-Acto knife. Just Dremel so much faster, so I like to use that. Very careful here, and just Dremel it away. That should be good. Now the other one. And that should be good. Now we can do a test fit, make sure everything looks good. And it does. Just going to clean up some of that excess material left over, and then we can just attach it. Alright, just going to use regular old super glue. Just going to put some little tiny dabs here at the base of the shoulder, and then on top here, and on the other side. And that should do it. Now we'll get our shoulder pad, and then I just like to have it right there so it's flush with the arm. Lines up nicely with our stripe we made down the arm. Let's see if I can get that in focus. There we go. Lines up nicely with the stripe we made down the arm, and looks good. Now we can do the other one. Shoulder pad, line it up with the red stripe, just glue that in place. As usual for the hot glue joint, we're just going to start off by getting some hot glue, or getting some Vaseline, putting it on the neck peg, making a nice thin layer around everything. There we go. Put that down. Now we'll grab our hot glue gun and fill up the hole we made in the head for the ball joint to go in. There we go. Now we can just fit it. Oops. Just push it on. Alright, and that's it. Just let him dry and he's done. Again, this decal sheet for the dots, I made that myself and it'll be linked in the video description, so if you want to use that, feel free. And just put it on water slide transfer paper and you're good to go. Alright, so that concludes this tutorial. Hopefully this was helpful. Again, you can do this to make really any color of clone. However, the captain and the commander are easiest because the helmet and shoulders are already existing pieces in the right color scheme. You could do a sergeant lieutenant, and I plan to do so myself later. However, that would require having to mask off the fin, the helmet, and the shoulder pads as well. So it's just a little bit of extra work. I recommend, if you want to do this for the first time, do these guys, do either the red or the yellow one, depending on which ones you have. Use the dots I provided, use those, print those out, put them on that paper, and do these as your first ones, and then once you have a good understanding of how it works, then move on and do the lieutenant or the sergeant, as they're just a little bit more difficult. Anyways, until next time, peace!